Hi everyone, I'm Amir Keren from Erizos. In this webinar, we'll be discussing podcast workflow for Pixotope. We'll be discussing how to create shows and how to do the day-to-day basic operation for podcast with Pixotope. That's me. I'm Erizos CTO, and that's my email. No need to write it. We'll have it also at the end, some emails and contact information. So a little bit about Erizos. We provide creative solution and professional services for the broadcast industry in the past few years. Our tools are being used in the leading broadcasters around the world, and it's both creative tools and workflow tools that are being used on a daily basis, and on a lot of the largest broadcasting events in the world. Today, as I said earlier, we'll be discussing Erizos Studio. So the broadcast workflow for Pixotope, for Unreal Engine, it provides a couple of settings, let's say, for how to manage a show, how to run a playlist. All these topics we'll be discussing today, and how to use them in a proper webcast operation or on a regular show. Okay, so let's start by showing Erizos Studio. Just a short explanation. Erizos Studio is a control software, control system that was made to control multiple rendering engines, but yet provide a single control app and a single method of operation to save the amount of manpower and training needed to run a different system side by side. So what you see here now, this is Erizos Studio, and this is once you install it and have it configured. When you run it, this is the main view. This is what you would see. So this is a welcome view. So as you can see, the very first thing that the software asks you is what would you like to do? Would you like to start a new show or open an existing show? Because everything is blank here, we'll start a new show. So I created a new show, and as you can see, it's pretty empty. There's a playlist on the left, multiplayer playlist, which we have only one. It's completely empty. On the bottom part, over here, this is the payload editor, or the filling form to push data. And on the right, this is the polygon control. Now, in previous webinar session, the Pixopalooza session, you learn how to install Pixotope, how to set it up correctly, how to do the camera tracking, how to set that up, how to do the gear, and then later how to do content, how to create an amazing graphics. And now that you've mastered all those sessions, the next level is, of course, now that you have an amazing graphics, is to start pushing data, give the power to the content editor and to the operators to run the actual show, to push data, to run the events. And this is where Erizos Studio comes into action. Okay, so let's get down to business. So the first thing that I will do is import some graphics. And on the top menu, we have an import button. When I click the import button, I would see the templates that I currently have. Now, templates are essentially the graphic elements that I can control. In Pixotope, a graphic element could be a virtual studio, an AR studio, and all the elements that you have inside that studio. So let's import some. So we'll click Show Template Browser. And in here, we can see the Pixotope project browser. On the left, all the available projects that I have installed on my machine, or available to all the systems. And on the right, the levels of that project. So I will just go ahead and import the news. project. And you can see I get some information about the location of that map or level. And if I'll expand this expander, you can see all the elements that we've exposed that we can control in this studio. Just to show you, I mentioned earlier that Erizos Studio is an agnostic control system that supports out of the box many rendering systems, including Vizrt, Singular, etc. So on the left here, we can select which render system we want to import graphics from. So let's select Singular, for example. Then let's import that one. And we can select Vizrt and import a few graphics as well. Now, what you see here, this is the graphic hub, basically where all the scenes are being stored, all the graphic templates. Okay, so that's now. So now I have a couple of graphics. Now let's start by controlling and pushing some data. When I double click an item in the template list, it will automatically create a page in the playlist. Now, for you that are not familiar with the concept and the terms page and template, a template is what fields are exposed. It's a graphic element essentially, and the properties are exposed to control that graphic element. For example, if it's, let's say it's a lower third, you might have a title, subtitle, and maybe an image, or just a theme color that you want the whole studio to change to, and so on. So let's create a couple of pages from the studio theme and the elections candidate. Okay, so once I selected this page, you can see I started to see the actual studio that we have. Now, let me share my second screen, and I'll explain what you would see here too. So on the left side, we have Erizos Studio, and on the right side, this is it's actually a VNC to one of our output channels. Now, because we're using a VNC to remote preview, animation might get a bit jittery, but it's just because of the VNC. So we can have one view of the control and the program channel, and we would like to see the operation of things. So, as I said, in the Erizos Studio, we have, once we loaded this template or this page, it has some fields here. And those fields are the theme of that studio. This is how the designer that made that graphic has decided to expose. So you can see I can hit normal, and that's the light purple. There's a news theme, which is bluish. I can hit sports. It's basically different colors. Now, essentially, like I said earlier, a template is a set of exposed properties then connected to the graphic element. A page is essentially a data element. It's the data for that template. And so we can have one page for the, let's say, the purple studio. And let's create another page for the news segment. And while we're at it, we'll make another one for sport. Okay. Right. So now I can select any one of my data elements, any one of my pages, and it would immediately load that data in my local preview. Now, as you can see, the program on my other screen, it's still purple. It hasn't changed yet. The reason is that I didn't take that graphics on L, or that data element into on L. So let's say we're doing a few segments, like we said earlier, news, sports, and health. So once I'm doing news and I'm happy with the graphic, yes, now it's time to show the blue theme. I'll just click on the take button, and it would immediately reflect in my program channel. I will then go to the sports and do the exact same thing. It will change to red, and so on and so forth. So this is a very, very basic graphic template, but it illustrates in a really nice way the template page, local preview program workflow. Okay, so now let's create something a bit more interesting. Doing news. Now I will be using sometimes the keyboard shortcut and sometimes the button. Every operation in Erizos Studio could be set up to a shortcut button. So I set up F1, F2 as the take in, take out, or the program in, program out for the page. So I'll just click F1 and it will immediately fire on my output channel. So let's select this element. We need a bar for the US selection. So you can see in here, this is a bit more complex graphic template. It has 3 fields: a title, a name, an image, and the position. So we can show, let's talk about Trump. Select the image of Trump. And you can see the designer has exposed some control to that bar. I can reposition it, I can rotate it, maybe scale it a bit, but not too much. He set the range that is the allowed range to scale it or to rotate it. I cannot rotate it over the X or Y, only over the Z. Now, yeah, this looks fine, you know, this Trump, we could take it on L, but the image of Trump is not really nicely framed. It's a bit too far away. We can crop that image after we selected it. So, yeah, this is the area we want to use, and we get it in. So let's save that page, and we can later access it. And again, just the page template workflow, we can create multiple elements of that. Let's do now one for Biden, Joe Biden. At the same position. So let's do a save as. Yep. So now we can toggle. Oops, I didn't see. That's the save one. Yep. Okay, so now we can go now. But before we go now, I would like to see that graphic element. As you noticed, once I selected that page, I immediately saw that bar out of the blue just came and appeared in the middle of my studio. Of course, I don't want that to happen now. We have a nice in and out animation. I would like to preview that to see how that it looks. I can click in button, and I could see, oh yeah, that works. It doesn't, it looks okay. The camera position is fine. I can see the out animation. Locally preview, nothing goes on it. Once I'm happy with it, I can hit the take in, and it will appear on my output channel. Now, once I'm selecting Joe Biden, and I will do take in, it will immediately appear. Okay. As I said earlier, in terms of UI, the properties that we see here, this is maybe a little bit more complex than the first example, but the way it works is the designer of that graphic element exposed those 3 properties, and the Erizos Studio, once it imported that graphic, it automatically created this UI. So this is an auto-populated UI with all the exposed property. If we would make a change to that template and add maybe another text string, it will appear in here in that list. We will show later down the webinar a method to create custom UIs for your templates. so hold tight. And that, by the way, that custom UI that we'll be using, that we'll be showcasing, will basically show how we can get data from an external source and automatically populate all the control fields in the template based on that, based on some argument, based on some data. But that's, of course, that's for later. Like I said in the beginning, Erizos Studio comes from, and as I said, from the point of view that at least today or the last year or so, a lot of the operations are mixed render systems. You might have a Virtual Studio in Pixotope, a lower third system like Singular or any other, or any other system, and you might find it a bit cumbersome or a bit hard to manage a show where you would need an operator for any one of those systems to just run a show. Erizos Studio provides a unified workflow for all these renderers and allows you to do a one-man show, to create the content, to operate the show regardless of the render system. So let's just show that. After I imported, I don't know if you remember, I imported some Vizrt graphics and a Singular graphic as well. So let's create a couple of those. Right. So let's select the Vizrt graphic. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but it was immediately the renderer changed from Pixotope to Viz. Now, the UI that you would see in the bottom, it's exactly the same for Viz, for Pixotope, and Singular, and any other system as well. Let's write something happened. And this is about the selection. Make it visible, and maybe reposition it like that. So as you can see, the same UI, same workflow, different rendering system. We'll do the same for Singular. Now, for you who are not familiar with Singular, Singular is a web-based render system that can do many things. And again, we support it out of the box, and it just works like everything. In here, like before, we can preview the in animation, preview the out animation, and once we're happy, we can take it. Right. Okay, so that was the basic overview. Now let's get a deeper dive into the infrastructure and configuration. Right. So, Erizos Studio has two modes. The simple mode is standalone. Standalone means that we can have just Erizos Studio as a standalone application. You don't need any other software to run it. Basically, if you have a small show and you don't need MOS integration and you don't need sync workflow, you have just one control station and you want to control multiple machines. So that's the standalone. It comes self-contained. You don't need to install anything. You just need to add the addresses of those machines, those output channels, import the graphics, and you're ready to go. The more common configuration is to have a centralized server. Now, a Erizos Studio server is basically the central processing unit that handles all the internal logic and stores the data. Once you go for a server, you get many benefits, such as you can have multiple clients connected to the same server and seeing the same data that's shared. You can have two clients working on the same show on different playlists, or completely two different shows on completely two different studios. it's up to you. It's depending on how your setup is configured, is done. Yeah, okay, so the control client is basically an application installed in the control room, and it's used by the CG operator to control the graphics in real time. So this is what we saw earlier. This was the control client. DataHub is the internal database that we use. Now, once you go for a server, you can have redundancy of that backup for that data. In case, God forbid, something, the machine, goes on fire or something, you can have a hot backup swappable in just a few seconds of a different database, and everything, the user will not even feel it except a 2-3 second glitch. It will immediately go into action and be prepared to serve that data. It's a cross data backup system. Another part of the server is the MOS gateway. The MOS gateway is essentially a component inside the server that knows how to communicate with the Newsroom system, such as Octopus. And by the way, this is the system we will be demonstrating later on in this webinar, or iNews, ENPS, and so on. And by the way, thank you, Octopus, for sharing the resources with us. Thank you very much. And of course, the last and the most important part is the render engine. At the end, we have to control rendering system. And like I said in the beginning, it could be Pixotope, Unreal, Singular, and so on. Okay. So let's switch back to post strings. By the way, we will show later, part of the MOS presentation, we will show the UI that will be used by journalists or content editor using the MOS. It's similar to what you see here, but of course different. We will not see the playlist and so on. Let's go and explain a little bit more about the settings. So Erizos Studio is built on web technologies, which basically mean, let me open that over here. All the UI that you see here is completely accessible from any system. You can run it on a browser, you can run it on a Mac, you can run it on a Windows. We would see the exact same operation. And as I said, we are using here a server, a centralized server. So all the operations are in sync. If I create a page in one system, I will see it if the other machine is open to the same show, to the same playlist, we would see that. So for example, if we have this lower third from Singular, we can change it to create another page. It would immediately show up in both because both have the same show open and at the same playlist. And like I mentioned earlier, they don't have to be working on the same show on the same playlist. We can have multiple shows with multiple playlists. Okay, so let's go through the settings. Yeah, so as you can see in the first tab in the settings, the render is basically once you install a Vizrt Studio server on your station, or you would need to first configure what system do you operate. It will be Unreal, Viz, Singular, etc. Now, the good thing about Pixotope is we control Pixotope using our plugin. We have an Unreal Engine plugin that we can run natively on Pixotope. And the good thing, and that's really unique to Pixotope, that they provide an SDK. And so using this SDK, we can run everything natively. And you can see there are some arguments for every one of those systems. For Pixotope, there isn't. It just works. As you enable it, the system knows how to read all the settings automatically. And it's like literally zero-based configuration. Worth mentioning while we're at it, in general, setting up Pixotope, now that you've seen the webinars, you know how easy it is to set up a real studio, to set up all the data. And this is something we really like. And of course, setting up the key, and it was really easy. Another great feature of Pixotope that I will show later is that we don't have to cook the game. We don't have to publish it, we bake it. Pixotope can go on any second to go on air to make changes in the last second in our graphics, and then hit the preview or just launch it in on air mode, and we'll have all the latest changes. We don't have to wait half an hour or more to see it live. And this is one of the great advantages of Pixotope. Okay. So the next tab is preview. Preview, basically we can define where we would like, do we have a local preview for any one of those systems? And we also have another tab here, is the remote preview or a snapshot preview engine that we can define to allow snapshot images. Now, in here, in Erizos Studio, if I go back to this template here, you saw that I can take it in and take it out. This is a live input. There's a Pixotope instance running on my machine, and we you can see the live preview of what's happening. Now, sometimes you might be running it on a browser, and you don't have Pixotope running locally, or maybe on a tablet. And you might have 200 journalist stations that you don't want install Pixotope and set up everything for them. You can set up a remote snapshot engine in a centralized location or a bunch of them, and basically provide snapshot images to the operator while they prepare, to the journalists while they prepare the content. I will show that later on. Storage is storage. It's interesting. The MOS configuration, basically a very straightforward interface. You define the ports, you define how many days to keep the data elements. In here, we defined the Octopus Newsroom system, basically the ID, the IP, and some other IDs and ports, and that's it. And the last but not least, it's the shortcuts. You can define for most of the day-to-day operation you would do in Erizos Studio, you can define a keyboard shortcut. So that's easy to do. I take in, I take out, like it's like program in, program out for the graphics, read, take and read next, and so on. So just to show what I meant before. So in here, as you can see, I'm running it on a browser. I don't have Pixotope. Well, I do have Pixotope running locally, but the browser doesn't know it. I can open it on another machine, and it will still be like that. As you can see, I can set the date and say, right, load. There's a small bar saying, okay, wait until I finish typing the data, and then it sends that payload, that page, to the centralized snapshot engine, and it sends back an image. So you can see the result is an image. And essentially, this is what we need. We don't need to see when we create content. We want to make sure that the text is not too long and the graphics looks okay. So if I do something very long, well, there's a limit of the number of characters here. I can see how it fits. And worth mentioning, like before, it's completely agnostic. Once we set, let's do this graphic, it will just load it. And this is also a snapshot. Maybe the only exception to this rule is Singular, because Singular is web-based. And because it's web-based, we can see animation. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the next section. So let's take that graphic out. Right. So the next section that I would like to speak about is the playlist. Now, a playlist in a regular show, you can have literally dozens or sometimes hundreds of pages of data elements, pages, and it might get too hard to maintain a big list that you need to scroll down and scroll up. So the playlist has some elements that allows you to do a better organization of your structure of the show, and also it has some other features that I would like to explain. So first is there are two main fields here: the name and the description. The name is the name of the page that we can call up to that element. So later we can search for that. To the big station, they use usually a 4-digit code that they can later look up easily. But in here, we also allow, like for an alphanumeric text that you can search. The next tab is the description, and it provides an automated preview of the data that there is in that page. For example, yeah, maybe here, this is a bit more interesting in terms of fields. We have a breaking news and the US election 2020. You can see, I can see a small, without opening the page, I know kind of have an idea of what's going on inside. In here, I have only the Erizos text, so I can see Erizos. And if I create another page here, write Pixotope, just save as, I can see that it has a preview. So before selecting it, I know exactly how it will look like, or at least I will have an idea. Now, it could be auto-populated, or we can write explicit, we can set some description text to it. The same for the page, of course. Okay, so data organization. As I said earlier, there could be quite many pages in the playlist, and we can create groups to keep everything organized. So let's create a group. We call it, I don't know, we said earlier about segments. We have news, and then the news maybe divided into news, coronavirus, and then the health, and then sport, and so on. So let's create a couple of groups to keep everything organized. So maybe we'll talk about news, and then health, and inside health, let's go coronavirus, then coronavirus in Italy. And in the news, it's the US election, and so on. So we created a few some structure, and now we can basically select multiple pages and drag them and put them in the right location. We can do multi-select of elements. We can reorganize our element in our playlist like that, or we can drag and drop it to the right location. So now everything should be right. Let's set that one. Yep. So again, it's a very intuitive way to keep your data organized. So in news, we have the selection. We can go item by item, see the graphics, iterate through it, take it. Once we're done with it, we can jump to the next section. Okay, so let's switch back to this element, this one. So as I said earlier, we can take the graphics on there. So this Trump bar, we're happy with it. We can take it on there, and we will see it pop in our output channel. Now, let's say the person that created the page has made it with a typo. Yep, or I don't know. So made it accidentally like that. So we can re-edit it and then save it and then take it, but it's too long. If someone finds a typo and you want immediately to change it, let's take it out to see it. Yeah, we want to change it immediately. So we don't have to save the page. We can immediately change it, click the shortcut button, it would automatically quickly update the data in our output channel. We don't have to save the page. Having said so, we can take it the loaded page, or we can directly take it from here and take in and we change to Joe Biden. At this point of time, I would like to import another template, and that's our weather bar. And this is another bar. It has, the weather forecast and so on. So we can have the title, the temperature, the icon. Select some icon. Yeah, something like that. Right. Again, like before, I can preview the graphics, I can take it out, and once I'm happy with it, I can take it on. Now, let's say we have a two-camera setup in this studio. And basically, one camera 1, camera 2, and we have the circle here in the middle. And camera 1 is basically maybe the jib, and we would like to see that bar pop in. But on camera 2, we're we're filming the talent, and we don't want the bar to appear in here and maybe hide the talent. We want to fire that graphics only on one camera. So we can achieve that using our profile editor. So let me create another profile from scratch. Okay, so what is a profile? A profile is a method to organize your engines, regard the other engines, again, like before, to the Pixotope, Singular, and so on, into some channels. A channel could be like a designated preview channel and a designated program channel, of the default, and also other names. So let's create a few channels and then we can set it up. We have a preview channel, a program channel, or the default program channel. And maybe now, like I did before, let's have two channels for each one of our cameras. So the program would maybe be those two cameras. And camera 1 has camera 1, and camera 2 has only camera 2 engine. Now, I just dragged the same system for those engines. They are all Pixotope, but I can mix and match. I can add some Vizrt engines or Singular. It's just, we can add as many as we would like. Let's make something that does not exist. Yep, you can add it in here as well. So every time we do a take in, it will take that graphic to the selected program channel. At the moment, my program, the main program is my selected program channel. Now, because we have a lower third and a camera 1, let me switch to the view that I just created. So yeah, so as you can see, I have 4 engines in here. Two of the engines, camera 2 and this one that I just created, are offline. So that's why it shows a bit red. There's an error in that channel, so we need to address that. At the moment, it's okay. I don't care. It's fine with me. Once I hit the take button, it will send that data. It will load that element into those engines, to the appropriate channels. So we have, this is a Pixotope template, so it will send it to the Pixotope engines. It will not send that data to the Vizrt engine because it doesn't make sense. So we can do that, or we can say change for just for now, like I said, we have 2 cameras set up and I want to load it only on camera 1. We can quickly set the output as camera 1 and then take it. And basically, this is my camera 1 engine, so it will load only here, but not be sent to camera 2. I can prepare another thing and set camera 2 as the program. And if I will take it, nothing will happen because it's not being sent to camera 1 engine. So this is one way of operation. I can keep changing the output, the program channel, or if we switch back to here, we can manually select for each page which channel it is redirected to. So we can say, yeah, so this weather element should always go only to camera 1 or only to camera 2. And if I take it, nothing will happen because it sends the data only to camera 2. And if I change it to camera 1, send, it will change. Now, in case I don't know if you noticed, unlike before, we changed the data in a cut. So there was an in animation, an out animation, and every data change was a cut. Like in one frame, it updated data and loaded it into Pixotope. In this template, we define an in, out, and a change animation. So let me show you once again how it looks like. The bar rotates, and once the data is hidden from the camera, it updates the data and then rotates back. And we will also show that how you can do that inside Pixotope later down the webinar as we move along. Okay, so you saw that we can define multiple channels. We can set the output channel from the bar at the bottom or from the pages in here. Another method is that we can do it once for all the pages from that sort of type. We can say that the weather bar should always go to camera 1 unless we override it. So we can do that in our templates manager. We can take there's a weather single in here. That's the name of the template that we are using, the name of the element. We can say that always go to camera 1. And when we create pages of that template of that layer, it's by default with camera 1 being set here. This, of course, can be overridden and set to whatever we would like. Okay, so and again, like I said in the beginning, we will have a Q&A session at the end. So if you have questions, please wait. We'll answer all of your questions. You can prepare them, and we have enough time to answer any question that you might have. So I would like now to show the MOS workflow. So we have an Octopus system installed in the machine next to me. So let me see. Yep, everything is good. Right. So for you who are not familiar with Newsroom system is a method, is a system to allow journalists and content editor to prepare the story in ahead. Basically, they prepare, the different rundowns that we might have 3 news shows every day, the morning show, the evening news, the business news, and so on. And in each one of those shows, we would like to talk about story A, story B, and story C. So for you who are not familiar with Octopus, in here we have our rundowns. You can see multiple rundowns, like the evening news tomorrow at 7 p.m., the business news at 8, and so on. So we have the evening news of tomorrow at 7. And in here, we have all of our stories. Now, usually a story is made out of a few segments. It could be made from a text that will be shown at the teleprompter for the presenter. It could be a video clips that will be played and as part of that story. But it could also contain some graphic elements that we prepared. So let's double click. We have an international weather, and let's do national weather forecast. We will talk today about the weather data in the weather in the East West Coast. We'll have about in New York and Philadelphia and Miami. So in Octopus, and I guess it's correct to any other system, you can define keyboard shortcuts to generate MOS items. We have controller 1 being configured to run our MOS plugin. So I click control 1, and what it loads here, what we see here is basically our HTML5 MOS plugin being accessible via Octopus. So the first thing that we need to select is at what show this graphic element that we're preparing, at which show we are planning to use it. So we have only one show, which we name it new show. Let's give it a better name. Pixopalooza. Right. So here it is. I select it, and here we have all the available templates in that show. So let's do the weather singlet. Now, what you see here, it's a very similar interface to what you see here. As you see, the UI, the filling form is exactly the same, essentially. But we don't have the playlist, we don't have the program output control, and we don't have a live preview, obviously, because it's run in a browser on journalist machine, which is probably in 1997 was very old. So we get a snapshot image. So we can prepare the data here. We're talking about, so this is the New York. Yep. The temperature is, so I'm not so familiar with Fahrenheit, but I think it's okay, 75 Fahrenheit. We can specify the icon and so on. So let me create just a few weather points. Snow, why not? Use. So you can see I have this MOS item. It has, we can see a short description of the data. It's New York, 75 Fahrenheit, east, and so on. East wind. So let's create another element for the same show for the same. So New York, so Miami. Temperature is, I think 90 is nice. So let's use that. Like before, I will create another MOS element that is not really weather related, but I would like to make a point. Like we create a Pixotope graphic, it doesn't have to be a Pixotope. It could be any one of our other graphics, such as singular. You can have, I don't know, a lower line, 2 lines more. Let's say that one. Yeah. So we can prepare. And for the operator, it's completely a black box. It doesn't know that this graphic is Pixotope and that graphic was singular and this one is Viz. It doesn't know. It doesn't need to open 2 different plugins for 2 different systems. It's one interface, a very solid and simple interface for the operator. Again, it's bulletproof, very simple UI. Weather in East Coast. National weather. Click, hit use, and that's it. It doesn't even know what system it is. So let's close this story. course, I would like to save it. So the next thing I need to do is to activate that MOS playlist. So let's activate it. So our MOS gateway name is obviously Erizos gateway. This is the MOS device that we have configured here. Click OK. And now, once a MOS playlist or MOS rundown is activated, on any change, it will send all that playlist to a Erizos Studio server and keep it updated with the latest data. So back to Erizos Studio on the left screen, you can see I have three playlists. The first one, the one that we have, the one that I created before with just a few items, and of course the evening news. And this is the MOS playlist that we have. If I select it, you can see all the stories that we're going to talk about in this show. And if you look, you compare from what's on the left and what's on the right, you can see it's exactly the same. We have the international weather, and we can rename it, and it would immediately populate in here as well. Yeah. So each one of the stories is a folder. Inside the folder, we have all the graphic elements that we had. We created the MOS elements. So let me minimize that so you can see now the program channel. So you see I have the New York data element, which I created initially, and later on the one in Miami, and then the lower thirds in Singular. So we're happy with this graphic. We can take it and we would see how it pops in. We can select the next element, take it, and now we see the weather in Miami. Now we got some requests, of course. You don't have to trigger one page at a time. You can trigger multiple pages at once. You can right click to a folder and do a taking, and it will send all the data to all those pages to the output channels, even if it's a mix of systems or even if it's on the same on different channels. You can also do multi-select and say, okay, we want those two to be sent. So mine is already selected. Let's do that. Yeah. So if I had another engine preview here of Singular, you would see Singular change as well. Yeah. Okay. So that's about the MOS workflow. Yeah. I think the next thing that we'll show now is how to rig your scene. How to take the graphics that you did in Pixotope and expose the control feed, how to rig everything. So for that, I will close the Vizrt Studio. Yes, I'm sure I would like to exit. And in the Pixotope director, I will launch in editor the level. While we're doing it, let's run Vizrt Studio without a local preview, so we can, yeah, we don't need to have two local previews of Pixotope. We'll be using the editor as our preview system. Okay, so maybe I'll switch to one screen and then I can switch it back to two, so it will be easier for you to follow. Okay, let's start by delete some of the stuff from the previous webinar. Yeah, that's it. Right. So let's take one of the bars that we had. Let's take the one for the election, for example. Let me bring it in. Yeah. So in here, in this template, in this layer, we basically have an image and the text. That's essentially all the control fields that we want to expose to the operator and the journalist to change. So in the tree, we also add the position. So it's 3 elements that we want to expose. So this is the candidate bar. So we have a root, candidate root. We have the bar itself, or the root of that. We have the icon, which holds the texture, and the title. So in here, in the title, it's a text actor, a Erizos text actor, that we can set the data. Change and we see. To control the text element, we would like to add a control text. So by clicking the Add Component button, once we are on that title, we're basically saying we want to control the actor we're currently selected. Okay, control text. Now I already have one that I made previously, and I will just go through its properties. So in the control text over here, we have a couple of properties. We have the control ID, and that's the internal ID we use to manage it. Now it's a numeric. It could be anything you would like it to be, string, any string that you would like. The reason we do 0, 1, 0, 2, and so on, it's a convention we use in the broadcast in order to do the sorting. 0, 1 will always be before 0, 2, and so on. So this is just a convenient way of setting up your control channels. The title, that's the string or the title that will be displayed to the operator or the content editor as the name of that field. And layer, we can bunch or gather together a few controls and hook them up in one element. This is the name of the layer we want to have those together. So in here we will have election candidate layer with an in and out animation, and in that layer we'll have a text, an image, and a control actor. So inside the control actor, we can see a couple of properties that allows us to control it, or we can set a couple of properties to how what data is allowed. For example, the maximum character. We can say no more than 10 characters. We can of course remove that, and then as we type in, we can set a max width to the text, and it will just squeeze. So let's save it like that. We can force an all uppercase. So even if the user types in a lowercase text, it will be shown as all caps on L. We can expose the kerning, the line spacing, and the alignment, but I don't want anyone to change that. I'm happy with this design, so we'll leave that unchecked. So that's the control text. We'll just go through a few of those controls so you'll get a better idea of what can be done. So, okay, the next element is the control texture. The control texture, basically, we want to set up an image. So if we'll dive into the material editor of this plane, you can see that we have a parameter. Basically, in the material editor, in case you don't know, you can define parameters to be controlled from the outside. A parameter could be a scalar, which is a number, for example, the opacity or the roughness of that material. It could be a texture sampler, which basically means an image. Or it could be a vector. A vector, it could be either X, Y, Z or a color. 99% of the times it means, a color or a UV, like what you want to move it. But that's the most commonly used parameters. So in here, I have one parameter named, surprisingly, image. So we want to control from the outside this node, this material node, the image node. So we added the control texture to that actor. We set the control ID 02 because we want it to be after the title. We name it image. It's part of the election candidate layer. And the next element we have is the texture name, and that's the name, that node's name that we want to control. So when we push from the outside a different image, it will know to set it with the external image source. Now, you saw that I have this in and out animation, but I still want to allow the operator to move it. So the way we did it is that the animation was done on this election candidate. This is the element that moves up and down. On top of that, or its parent, is we have a null object, which basically we want to allow the users to move, left and right, and maybe rotate it only on the Z axis and scale it up to a certain level. So for that, we will add control actor. So we already did it, and we have here a control actor. And you can see here are all the properties I decided to expose. We expose the position, and we set that the minimum, it should be between this range. Maybe we gave them too much freehand, but that's okay. Here we want to do the rotation, but we only, the minimum and maximum of the rotation is always 0, so they cannot rotate it on the X or Y value, because we don't want to do that, only change like that. So between minus 3,600 to up to plus 3,600. And the same for scale. We don't want to do a huge, like 500 scale, only between 0.8 to 1.3. Yeah, so now I would like to show you how we did the control kernel. Now, let me share back two screens. As you remember, like, let's hit it on L. As you can see here, we can change the color of the entire studio set in one button. So we have many elements, and we want to allow, we don't want to give, a color picker to the operator to choose the right color, because most operators or most journalists are colorblind, and they will select really bad colors. We want to give them like a closed set of options. We want only, the predefined news, sports, health, and so on. We don't want to freestyle color picker for picking for them. So how did we do that? So back, stop here now. I'll select that TV monitor, for example. So that TV monitor, if I'll go into the materials, it has a wall table. If I double click it, I'll put it over here. You can see I have a black, well, it's purple, but we take only one channel, so it's essentially a black and white texture. And we have a branding parameter, and that's a vector based, so it's a color that we can set. And if we change it to another color, we should see apply, and we should see it in all of them change to this yellow. Let's do cancel. No, without previous. That's it. I'm toasted. I saved it. Never mind. So the way we did it, the way we gave a closed set of options to the operator is in the control actor. And again, we have the control ID, the title, and the layer. The first thing we did is specify the color name, the name of that node element in our material. The name is obviously branding, so we wrote here branding. In addition to that, we added multiple presets, like the news, the sport, and so on. And each one of those presets has a matching color. And we apply that control color in all of the nodes that we have in here. So we did it once, and now we can change it to as many elements that we want. It has that name branding in the material editor exposed as a vector, as a parameter vector. No, don't save it, please. Right. Right, so let's just go through the different type of controls. We have a control color that we just saw. We have material scalar, media. Media allows us to play video clips, to play them from disk. We can use that. We have texture, that's the Joe Biden method. The actor is what we saw. We can change the position, the visibility, the rotation and scaling, the transformation. We have the text and a few more. Okay, so the next thing that I would like to show is the control layer. Now, in this studio, you saw that we have like the branding, the election bar coming up, and we also have a weather, and we have a few other elements, and each one of those elements is a layer in our studio. A layer basically is a group of control channels and some animation like in, out, and change. So let's go to here. We have an empty actor with all of our layers. We have the branding layer, which is just the branding layer. The idea is branding. It has just the title that will be presented to the user is Studio Team. So on the left here, if I go to the import and expand, I would see Studio Team here. If I would change it to something else and I re-import the template, it will show up on a different name. It has no animation because it's a one-click and that's it. However, if we go to the elections candidate, you can see it has elections candidate ID. The title is election space candidate. It has a group named weather that I will explain shortly. But the most important thing is this. We have, what is it? We have a sequencer that provides the in animation. So it's a very simple in animation. It has a transform like a location and rotation. And that's it. Now, I'm sure you remember that I had the in and out animation, but I did not set it here. I set only the in sequence. The system knows automatically once you do an out animation, if you don't have an out sequence, it will just play reverse the in animation. If you have, so basically, like most out animation are usually reversed. If you do want to do some other animation, you could still do it. You can click that and drag a different sequence in here. So maybe the in would be in here, like pop in, and out would be fade out, opacity animation. That's completely doable. The next is the change. I don't have it set in here. So as I said in the beginning of this webinar, once the data change, it will be a one frame. I change the data, I do take, it will instantly change. It will not rotate, it will not do that. Not like the weather. And for that, I would like to show the weather. I named it Weather International. Maybe it's not the best name, but or Weather Tomorrow, sorry. It's not the best name, but it's a name. So we have an in sequence and a change sequence. So let me bring this object in. And I'm on, yep. So, right. So I have this. Let me bring it manually. Yeah. Right. A bit more. Right. So, like you saw before, it first rotates, and then at this point of time where the data is hidden to the camera, we want to change the data and then go back. So the way we did it is we need to add an event layer in our sequence. We added an event layer and then we have another keyframe. This keyframe Let me create just a new one so you can see how it's being done. It's basically a blueprint that we can run at this point of time. So we want to do something very simple. We just want to tell the control plugins to now, at this point of time, read the data and populate all the control fields of that layer. So we write this, and we can write either Erizos, and we will see all the available functions for Erizos, or update layer. So Erizos control update layer. So this is a very simple function. It has basically one argument, and we need to provide the layer name that we want to change. Now, if you remember, the name of that layer is weather tomorrow. I should name it a better name, but still, as I said, this is the name we use. Click weather tomorrow, and that's it. When we play that sequence and that event will be triggered, it will just tell the plugins now at this point of time, read the data and populate it. And once it rotates back, it's with the updated text. Now, I would like to show you something. I'll minimize it. And I'll close that. Yeah, so let me take the Joe Biden. And then now load the weather point. Now, you saw that those two elements cannot coexist one next to another. I can't have the weather data, this bar, show up next to the election candidate altogether, because even though that it's different data, they cannot coexist. Once one of these data comes in, the other has to go out. Now, I didn't tell it to go out, it automatically did that. And the way we did it is by, we can set a group for any one of those layers, for example. So in this election candidate is part of the group weather, and also the weather forecast, which is a 3-bar forecast. It's also on the group weather, and also the weather point. So the system knows automatically which layer is in, and if you try to push in a different layer from the same group, it will automatically take out those. You don't have to do anything special, you just need to specify that group, and that's it. Okay, so we saw all the controls. Let me see what other controls we have. Yeah, so let's show control text. And let's add text element. Let's switch to the lead version. How does it look? Do you see it? Not so much. Let me put that into the view. Scale it a bit only. Oh, oops. That's not it. Let's just move. Let's now hide that bar. And so what do we see? Yeah. Okay, so we have this text. So control clock. Yeah. So as I add the control clock to my text, it immediately changed the way it looks, and we see now a timer basically. In control clock, we can specify, maybe that's the first thing that we will do, specify the time format. Is it hour, minute, seconds, or maybe we're doing something for sports that we need to see the milliseconds. I don't know if that's visible. Not that much. Again, sorry for. Nah. That's good enough. Not so much. I'll rotate it a little bit. Maybe now it will be in the frame. Yay. Okay. So now that this works. Let's create something a bit more noticeable. Paint it in red. Let's create a material instance. Material instance red. Right. So the material source would be this one, and we want it to be red. Save it. Content. Yeah, so now we have a red text. Right. So back to the control clock. So we can set the time format. We can specify what is the starting time. Is it 1 second? Is it 1 minute? You know, the value here is in seconds. So we can do 1 minute. Does it go up or does it go down once we start it? And more importantly, do we want to allow the operator to control the end time? Do you want to allow them to control the direction and so on? I'll just go ahead and hit both of them yes. Let's add the layer is clock that will do it immediately. We'll name it timer. Right. So back to my layers actor, we'll add another layer here. Control layer. We don't have in and out animation. We'll name it just clock. It has no group because we don't need it for now. We can hit play. Yep. And back, you can see both my screen, right? Yes, you can. We can re-import it, the template. Now, just a reminder, this is how it looks like. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 templates. And once we re-import it, we should see another template, and that's our clock. We've loaded it, we can select it. And because we have only one field in here, and that's the clock, we can see it here. We can see the starting time, the stop time, and the direction. Because I expose that to the operator, you can see that, you can set that. So let's say we want to go to count down from 1 minute to 0. We can start it, and it will fire away. It will just start. We can, of course, pause it. There's a foul in sports where the operator could wait until the game is back on, and once it's on, you can continue that. Now, what you're seeing now, the changes that I'm doing, is only for the local preview, obviously. The changes once once this template is being used in the output channels as well, we can control it from here as well. We can start the timer, we can pause it, continue it. We don't have to save the page and do take. So it's like, instead of 2-step operation, it's a 1-click. Instead of doing pause, take, continue, take, I can immediately do from here. Pause, continue, and so on. Yeah, so let's do continue. The next thing is freeze it. Freezing, usually that goes when it goes up. There's a lap for sports. So the clock continues to run, but we don't see it. Once we unfreeze it, we see it jump from 21 to 9 seconds. So that's really useful for Olympics and that kind of data. We can, of course, don't have to show timers. We can show the clock of the day. Yeah. Right. What else do we have? What other controls? Yeah, the clock, the blueprint, the actor. Yeah. So I think we'll jump to the control blueprint. So let me add an empty actor. So most of our controls are literally like a shortcut. You have a text object, you just want to change the text. You have an object that you would like to set an image on that. So we have control image or control texture and so on and so forth. But life is not easy, most of the time. Sometimes you have complex data, you have data tables, you have a table with results that you want to show. You cannot just add 20 controller texts. You need to manipulate the data. And for that, we created Control Blueprint. Control Blueprint allows you to do a more complex UI and expose properties. And then using blueprints, you can do any type of logic you would like to do inside the engine. So I added an empty, I will add an empty actor. I will make a blueprint out of it. So yeah, I'm guessing you're all familiar with blueprints and what can be done and how versatile this tool is. So I will skip that and I will just show how we can expose properties and then control them from Erizos Studio. So we can add a bunch of variables to Erizos Studio, to this template, sorry, to this controller. Basically, we can add as many variables as we would like. Once you define a variable, there are two things you need to do. First, give it a proper name. So let's say we're doing Olympics graphics and we have a runner. Each runner has, it's the marathon. It has a name. He has a name, an image. The country, is it from Kenya? Is it from Norway? And is it a male or a female, a gender? So yeah, so the first one is the name of the runner. Now we support all of the primitive types, meaning Boolean, byte, integer, strings, vector, and so on, and also more advanced types that we'll go through later, like the structures and enumeration. So we have a name, which is a string. Okay, so once I exposed the variable, it's very important and very step that we need to do is make it visible. So we need to keep that eye open to be so Erizos Studio can see that variable. So we have a name. We say that we have an image. It's not a Boolean, it's a texture to be. And the country. Let's say it's a string. Yeah. So yeah, that's enough. Let's compile it. Let's save it. And now let's, yeah, we need to add, of course, control blueprint. So we have control blueprint. We can name it, I don't know, runner. It's on the layer Olympics. No, let's name everything the same. Runner. So we need to have a layer for that one. Control runner. Okay, so I think we're good. We should hit preview live. Can you go and find that component performing? Let's close all of that. Add component editor. Oh, maybe it's. Yep. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing wrong here. So maybe I have something open in here. Save. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here.
Amir, while you're clicking on small menus, can you switch to single screen, because it's a bit hard to see what you're doing.
Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah, so let me relaunch the UI, the scene for a second. Let's save it all. Right. So I changed it. Let's go to the control to the levels that we have here. Oh yes, now so I have a runner. I hit preview live. Okay, so after I switch to one screen, I need to switch back to two screens. So in Erizos Studio, I need to import and re-import that graphics. And now I have the runner layer. I'll double click it and add it to the playlist. And once I select it, I can see that this is the properties that I expose. I have a string, an image that I can edit, and the country. Great. And now you remember that earlier I mentioned that I want to also give an option to the operator select, is it a male or a female? Now we can do add a Boolean variable and edit it, but I don't want to have a checkbox yes, no. I want to do something like we did for the team. You remember this radio button that we want to give them two options: is it male or female? So they can easily select it. So the way we did it is that we can define an enumeration. I already did one in the previous session. Let's delete that. Well, let's delete both of that. Right. And we'll create or switch back to one screen. And in other blueprints, we can create an enumeration. We'll call it gender. And in gender, we can basically define all the values that we want to expose, all the options that the operator could, or the content selector can do, content editor do. So we want to have a male option and another one for female. We'll save that asset, minimize it, and in our blueprint, yep, we'll add another variable and we would name it gender. We'll make that field, that property public, and the next thing is select the gender enumeration. That's it. I should be able to compile, hit preview live, and I will drag instead of showing two screens in here. I can right select, re-import that template, and basically I now have a male female options. Awesome. So that's great. So that's a nice way. Now, if that enumeration had not 5, maybe had 20 type of options, the system knows how to take those options and not display them as radio buttons because it's too long. It will switch to a drop down, to a combo box. So the operator will be able to open it and search for the right option. Right. So that's really cool. We created a template that we can have like with custom logic. That's great. But you know, it works fine for a single item, one runner, but I want to show a data table, you know, a table of runners, and to show here's someone from Kenya who's ranked #1 and he did 5 laps already, and someone from Spain that did it is ranked #2 and he did it in 30 seconds or 30 minutes, and so on. So in order to do that, we need to define a structure. Now, a structure is essentially a row in our table that we want to show. So let's do that quickly. define a structure. We'll call it runner. It's basically defined how one row, one runner looks like. So I would add all the variables I did earlier. I would just do it quickly. So we'll have a name, what did we add? Image, texture 2D, yep. And we add the country, that's a string, we add the gender, and that's gender. And I don't know, let's do the ranking. The rank, it's integer, basically a number without decimal point. It could be number 1, number 2, and so on, and maybe the timing, and that could be a float. Or laps, I don't know. So let's do a float. Right. So we're saving this structure, and if we go back to our blueprint, we don't need all those properties anymore. We can add one variable, and we can call it runners, plural, make it public, and we would select here the runner struct. So we have now a variable holding all that data, and it's not enough to have it for one runner. We want to have multiple runners, and we can change the type from a single variable to an array. So by clicking on this small button here, we get a context menu with a single variable, array, map, and set. Map and set don't really make sense for UI, but for internal data, of course, it makes sense. But we'll switch for an array. We need to compile that node. We can add a bunch of data. So we have the table with 3 elements. We can compile it, save it, save it, and preview it. And now back to Erizos Studio, I can re-import that template. And now it's being showed as a data table. And that's an inline data table. Yeah, we can have someone from Kenya, and we can specify all the properties that we want in here, and so on and so forth. And we didn't make any visualization of that data, but that's the easy part. Now Erizos Studio will know how to take that data and push it in a sensible way to Unreal, to Pixotope, and go forward. Okay, I think that's it. That's all the part I wanted to show about the blueprints. Yeah, so again,
Amir, we have some interest in the custom templates. So can we move on to that?
Yeah, so that's actually the next item in our list. Yep. Right. Okay. So let me switch back to 2 screens, and I can close it here and switch to version with. Oh crap! I saved it with the with the number inside. So let me quickly remove it. Sorry. With the clock. So let me quickly remove it and then launch it again. Yeah, the clock go away, please. Save. And launch this, and let's show back his close octopus. Right. So in this part, we'll show how we fetch data from an external source, from an external service. We'll be using openweather.org, OpenWeather.org provides current data, hourly forecast, and so on. We'll use the current weather data. It has a RESTful API. We can search for a city name, and then the data that we get, it's something that it has some explanation there. We get the temperature, the wind speed, which country, and so on. All the data for that weather point. So again, let's just load this element. Basically, imagine we're doing national weather show, and we're showing, I don't know, 10 cities. So for each city, we need to type in the title, the temperature, select the icon, wind and humidity. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, let's say 10 points. That's 50 fields that the user have to type in. And when he has to type that many numbers, errors can happen. So we don't want the user to type it, especially when we have that data available in some service. Okay, so for that, I will open the web browser, and I'll select UI Builder. I'll switch to 2 screens here. So on the right, I'll be doing the template, and on the left, you can see how it looks, the control. So in UI Builder, the first element that I would need to do is create a UI, a custom UI. So you remember that the automated UI, this is how it looks on the left. We have like tab selectors that we can see all the fields, and on the right, the actual data. So let's go ahead and select the weather single. Now it asks me, okay, the selected template does not have a custom UI. Would you like to create one? Yes, I do. And once I did it, automatically it created an automated UI. And immediately it populated in here, as you can see. We have all the data, the title, the temperature. It's created like a baseline, a starting point for me to create a template. So let me just drag this a bit down. Now a little bit about this part. UI Builder is a very fancy editor, a drag and drop editor to create custom UI. It consists of a few parts. You can drag basically any elements that you like. It could be, a label, a text input, a drop down, and so on. And you can change and style any one of those elements, basically with HTML and CSS. But we provide you with a wrapping method to do it in a nice, editor fashion. So we can, for example, in here, let's make it a bit bigger. We can select a font. We can select the size. We can change the color. And we can do something a bit more fancy, like selecting maybe text shadow. Again, I'm not a great artist, but you can see, maybe not blue, let's do it. But you can see, you can do a lot of things here. We can set the opacity, change the cursor, give it a border, and so on. So let's do much more. It's really a full WYSIWYG editor for UI. So let's delete this ugly component adjustment. Right. So we want to search for. Oh, sorry, I did not say. On the bottom part, we of course have a code editor, a JavaScript code editor that we can write script to hook all those parts together and write custom logic. So let's add a text input. Let's make it like that. And let's have a drop down. And okay, so that's the search. Name it search. We have a drop down so the user can select. Let's say you're doing international, not national. So you have maybe Fahrenheit and Celsius. This is. We have a drop down with units. We want to go metric.
Mia, can we go single screen again while you're building the template?
Yes, of course. Imperial, yeah, Imperial. This I hope I don't have a typo. But yeah, and I want by default to go to, I will change that later. So basically, we want to listen to events that change in here and then populate all those fields automatically. I prepared in advance some script. So let's copy and paste it. I will briefly go in here on the script and explain. So we listen to onChange for the search box and for the dropdown, the unit. When any of those controls changes, I want to trigger an update. Now I don't want to do an immediate. Update. I want to wait a while because the user. Oh, sorry, I pressed the refresh button accidentally. So let me do that quickly again. Drop down. So I don't want to do an immediate update to that to fetch the data because user might type New York NEW, and I want only once the user stop typing, let's say after a second or half a second that he didn't type any character, to fetch that data. So let's do it quickly what we did before. Okay, so we basically do a timeout and we wait that the user has, didn't type in anything for half a second, and then we get the weather data. We basically do a request, like a RESTful request from the Open Weather Map API, and we get the value, the main temperature, the humidity, the condition, and then we just display it. We might get the temperature is 12.5, and we want to display it in a better way. We can round that value to the nearest integer value. So let's save it. And now, if I bring that into view, we have those 2 points. So we can write Paris. It will fetch the data, and it immediately go up Paris, and now it's 23 Celsius degrees in Paris. We can select the period, and that's 73 Fahrenheit, and the wind is 2 miles per hour. Now the icon would also change. In the script, we can fetch the right icon based on the data that we got in the JSON. So if we write here New York, so I think it's correct. Yeah, it's 46. I don't know how much. I need to switch back to Celsius. 8 degrees. So yeah, it's pretty cold now in New York, but we have a page where we can go. We can create an icon for that. New York. We can search Miami, and that's expected. It's quite hot now in Miami, and we can select, I don't know, Toronto. It's cold there, no? But yeah, and it's snowing. So again, I can create 5, 6, 10 pages here quite rapidly with some services that I have up and running, and easy. I eliminated the potential errors that I might get by typing it manually or allowing the content editor or the meteorologist to punch in those numbers. And of course, the possibilities here are quite endless. You can do, let's say, if we're talking about the US election, that you have the Senate and Congress, and there are so many candidates and so many headshots of the different candidates. You don't want to put everything inside your Unreal or your Pixotope scene. You want to save it all externally. So if there's an error in one of the headshots or one of the title, you update it once in your own server or in your REST service, and then it will immediately populate it correctly to the fields that you have in your template. I hope it makes sense. Yeah, but just a few words about, let's switch back to...
Amir, just before we go into the Erizos Studio API, just some questions about the editor here. Chris is asking, the JavaScript editor there supports ES6 extensions?
Yes, so right. So at the moment it supports ES. Well, first of all, you have to have a modern browser. Yes, you cannot run Internet Explorer for that. We don't support Internet Explorer at all. So it supports ES 2015. In the next version that we'll release, we'll be releasing it with Babel, meaning that it will get transferred to a backward compatible browser. So even if your journal is using an old Chrome or an old Firefox, it will still work. You can write modern JavaScript like ES 2020, and it will get, you'll be able to run that script all over the place on all different browsers, not Internet Explorer, obviously. We will support, at the moment we have built-in third-party libraries that you can use, and that's we expose super agent, and that's for requests to do a get, post, delete, and so on. Lodash and Moment. Yeah, that's it. We will, in the next version, which is planned to be around IBC, in case there will be an IBC, I don't know, let's wait, we will allow to add custom libraries. So you have another tab in here that you can click it and add a third-party library that you have to pre-install on the server, because obviously most the science station don't have internet, so it's like a solution to have. You can add third-party libraries, install it once on your server, and then it's available for design. Now, a little bit about the editor here. I did not go through it. So on the right side, we can add, as you saw, some new elements. We can add a button, a media browser, and so on. The next tab is we can see the tree of our UI. We can select any element, and it will automatically get selected in the UI here, and we can see all the properties that we have. The next one is the control. So we can see here all the control fields that we have. We have a title group, which has a title. We have a temperature that has a temperature, an icon, and so on and so on. This is also nice to see. Let's say I can add another text box, text input. So we want to hook this text to be in sync with one of the fields, for example, the title. So I would like to see it twice for some sort of reason. So the way to do it, in the field ID, I have a drop down. The drop down shows me all the available control fields that I have and the data. For example, I have title, and it's linked to 01.text. So I can select it, I can save it. And now, if I would go drag this UI in here, again, it doesn't really make sense to have the same ID twice, but to illustrate, tomorrow. As I type it once, it will immediately reflect it in all the correct text boxes, text inputted that we have.
Amir, another question from Chris is, how do we handle undefined or null values? Is that going to crash Studio, or will we catch the exception?
Right. So, okay, a nice question. So maybe I can explain about the infrastructure here. So as I said, Erizos Studio is all HTML based. We're running the UI in here in a sandboxed iframe. So it's completely separated from Erizos Studio. So in case someone did something stupid, or let's say I would do an endless loop, right, while through doing nothing. So it will not hang out, it will not kill or hug the CPU. So I might do while do, nothing. So it's basically endless loop killing the UI. Yeah, so let me bring that back. So it's not only that this script is running on a different sandbox iframe, it also runs it on a web worker, meaning on a different thread. So even now that the CPU is being hogged and it's being killed, I can still operate and do stuff. The UI is still responsive. It doesn't do anything. And besides that, the system also always monitor on the JavaScript code. In case it did not respond for more than 5 seconds, I believe, 4 seconds, it says, okay, something is wrong here. It shouldn't be like that, and it completely it kills the JavaScript because it's in an endless loop. Now, following the first question regarding coding convention and what ES we support, you can write, of course, like I did here, an async function. Async functions is a smart way to write code. It doesn't hog the CPU. It allows you to write a more modular code that can be waited upon. So in here, we're requesting some data, and basically only when that request will succeed or fail, it will move to the next, leaving the CPU idle to do other tasks while it does that. I hope it answers. Well, we have a few more sessions, like the MediaHub, I think, and yeah, and that's it, and then the QA. But maybe the UI builder has more specific questions, so maybe we can ask them now if someone else has a problem.
Adam Cooper is asking about playlists inside Studio. So, Amir, can you show how a show can have multiple playlists and how you can jump between that and how that works?
Yeah, of course. So in here we can define, basically we have 3 playlists in this show. We have playlists that we are running now, a new playlist that I created in the beginning of this webinar, and this is the MOS playlist that we have. So we can easily create a new playlist, name it, let's say it's the video playlist. And we can basically put some graphics in here. I did not show those templates, I can show that later. Yeah, maybe it's a good chance to show it. So we have the big video wall on the back, you can see. Basically, yeah, we can change the image that we show there. In here, we can do graphics, video, users. We can control anyone. It could be an AR element. I did not mention it in the beginning, sorry. An AR element or something 2D in one of the monitors. And here we change the image. So this is in Erizos, and then you can show maybe Pixotope, prepare a page of that. Or maybe it's some graphic image or asset that the graphic team has made. Yeah, I remember from the last session, this image is corrupted. So yeah. Okay, so we have multiple playlists. We can switch between them. If I switch for a second to my 2 screens. Right. So basically now we can have 2 users running on the same show with different playlists. In here I have the regular playlist, and I would get like the preview of the elements. And we have someone else next to him controlling the video playlist. And he's setting the data that will be changing in the video in case you would like to do that. And they are completely separated, even though that we have a single server managing it all. We can have completely 2 different stations working on the same show on different playlists or even the same. Now this doesn't have to be like that. It could be also different machine, different control station on different shows. Okay, but is there any other question regarding the UI builder there, or maybe I can then jump to the MediaHub and then some Q&A?
Yeah, let's do MediaHub and Erizos API, Erizos Studio API.
Cool. Okay. So,
Amir, just before you go to that, Adam's asking about the multiple playlists. Can you just show how you can open up 2 windows of Erizos Studio and have 2 different playlists open at the same time?
I do now, don't you see? I'm
sorry.
one screen.
Okay.
So yeah, so on the left I have the regular playlist, and on the right I have the video playlist, and they're both on the same show. Okay. Okay, so I'll switch to a single monitor. Right. So as you saw in the beginning, and I will show it now also, we are running MediaHub. MediaHub is essentially, it's not a MAM solution. Yes, this is, from the start we need to say, not a full MAM solution. It's a service that was made for a specific target, a specific reason. We want to have a centralized storage or a centralized media asset store with all the images that we would like to use. It should be usable on any one of the systems that you might have. It could be Pixotope, it could be Singular, and so on. And we want to be able to cache the assets that the user has selected, that the content, the operator has selected, to cache locally on each one of the outputs. So if we have a 2-camera setup and we're playing some clip in any one of those engines, we don't want to, that clip will be played from the network, because if it's a 500 megabyte MXF, it will not play out well, most likely. We want to cache it locally to minimize all chances of network issue or any type of jittering. So from any place, we can open the MediaHub and basically select an asset. We can do, load like the weather graphics, or it could be, images that will be used by, the graph, so any asset, and we can assign it. Maybe I should show how we can ingest new graphics and how we can set data. So there are a few methods that you can do that. You can do it directly from here, or you can do it in an offline manner. Let's say you're a show, right? And you want to show, okay, I need a new Trump image or a new coronavirus image that you want to use. You can click new, select upload, and select the image. Select the image. Here's me. I'm now part of the US election candidates. We can select it, and it will show me in that. That's me on the weather. So we can do that. Or you can do that in an offline manner. You don't have to open Erizos Studio for that. So you can have a dedicated person, so the graphic team access it directly. It's available as a web service, like all of our products. It's complete HTML5 workflow. From the web browser, we can basically drag and drop images or click new and drag. So if I would go and select again my image, I can drag it in here and it will get uploaded. Then we can select that image and press the info tag or do the Control-I shortcut, and we see some information about that image. So when it was created, it's already 8 o'clock in here. We can write the tags. Yes, I'm part of the US election, and so on and so forth. So these tags will be used when we search for those assets. It will pop up. We can write metadata to that, and so on. We can have, so it's a really intuitive. You can see all the UI, you can see previews, move left, down, and so on. So maybe it's worth mentioning like method of operation with MediaHub. In generally, let's say there are 2 main methods of operation. One is manual. It's the way I just did it. I opened a browser, uploaded media, added some metadata, renamed, deleted the data, and so on. So that's the manual, and most of the time that works. But you can also use our API. Now, let's say you have a big database of images and you want to use the power of MediaHub to do the caching for you and all the other stuff, to the searching as well, to allow the operator to easily search for assets that you might have. So API is completely open. You can ingest data automatically based on some service you have, or to write a custom script to connect to it and feed it automatically. So maybe your graphic team can create assets, graphic elements, let's say graphic images that you use on a daily basis. And once you're done, it will throw them into a watch folder, and that watch folder gets uploaded and fed automatically to the system. Worth mentioning also what is planned to the next version. In the next version, again, around IBC time, is we will allow the jobs. Basically, a job is, right, so let's say someone uploads a video. The graphic team uploads the video. Let's say it's a 1080p video. You can do in the job, you can say, okay, no matter what the format the graphic team has created or the video is uploaded, I always want those videos in MXF format or in MP4 format based on this codec and that coding parameters. You can create multiple resolution automatically on every ingested video. So someone uploads a 1080p video and, or let's say a 4K video, and automatically you get 1080p, 720, 360, and so on videos, like a low resolution of that. It could also be used to do sanity check or to check the data that it's valid. For example, someone uploaded a 1080p, let's say we have a folder, you can say any video that upload to that folder should be checked if it's 1080p. If it's not 1080p, reject it. Do not upload, do not allow to ingest that video. So it's like some sort of safety measure. If someone uploads the wrong video in the wrong format, let's say, 1080 times 1280, yeah, so it's like kind of squarish. So it will reject and it will not allow it. Yeah. I think that's it I had to say about the MediaHub. Yeah. Okay, so that was easy. Now, unless there are questions related to that, Ronnie? I guess not.
No, I think we're good with the MediaHub. Should we cover the Erizos Studio API quickly, and then we'll go over the questions that have been posted?
Yeah. Right, so we have an info button. I can click on that. It will open the documentation. You can see here all the parts of the documentation, how to write custom user interface, the JavaScript API, and so on. But what we're interested is the Studio API. While I'm doing it, I will open Postman to show you. Now, the API that is documented here is the exact same API that we use to control Studio. So essentially what I'm saying, anything that we do, you can do. If you want to automatically create pages, let's say, for example, you're doing a football every Sunday, there's a football show, and again, sorry, I'm not so good in sports and in an American football even more than that, but you might do every Sunday a show about football, and you want to talk about all the matches you had in the last week. So again, you don't want someone to open I don't know, a template and create there was a match between New York and Miami, and those are the results. You want it to automatically being populated. So one method is to do it through the UI builder and fetch it automatically. Another method would be to you have your own service that every Sunday at noon it will run. It will fetch all that data, and through our API, it will create pages of that template with the relevant data. So when the show starts, let's say at 1 p.m., the operator opens Studio, click the show, and boom, he has a playlist of the Today Show with all the matches that were that week. So yeah, so let me show you some examples. Right, so let's start by close some of this stuff. Close. Yeah. Right, so let's show about the shows. In here we have one show named Pixopalooza. Let me create another one. another show. So I want to get a list of all the shows that we currently have. Right, so here's the request. Now, if I will request this and send it, it will say, computer says no, because I didn't type in the credentials. All of our API is protected by username and password to protect against, let's say you have an evil script or malware or something, you don't want it to spam. We block those requests at the entry so they can be managed and not spamming the database. So the default username password is, of course, admin that we can use. And let's see the list of shows. So we can see we have a Pixopalooza, and the idea of the show is that it was created on this time and so on and so forth. So if I'll do that and open the documentation, over the get show, you can see it has a response body of the example, an explanation about every one of the arguments you would see, the ID of the show, the name of the show, etc., etc. So we can do something like create, let's see, the list of templates of a specific show. So in the show manager, sorry, in the import manager, I want to get a list of those 4 templates. We have a 2 Vizrt template, singular composition, and an Unreal Studio. So this is the Pixopalooza show. You can select that. So I did not show how you can do that, but there is a request that you can do get show the ID, the playlist, and get the show ID template. So we'll be using this one. Right. So let me collapse that. Right, so I created, I got an array of 4 elements that we see. This is all JSON, very easy to parse. We can see that the first template that we have is a Pixotope template, and those are the templates. We have first the branding, which is an option. So, you know, is it news, sports, everything is completely open and transparent. So if we would like to create a page, we can do a post to a specific playlist, create the payload of that page, and then it would immediately appear in the playlist. We don't have to do refresh or anything. Once we post a page to the system, it will automatically update all the relevant clients with that data. Yeah, I think we covered that. Okay, so Q&A.
So we saw that during the playlist section that everything is synced in real time. If you have multiple users on the same playlist, they will see the data update as it's being built. So we fully support a multi-user workflow.
Running, it's a good question, and I would like to show something else.
Okay.
So yeah, so of course we can do that, multi-user, multiple playlists, but we can also support, you know, we can select multiple pages, copy it, select a different playlist, and paste those in here as well. We support that exporting. You can export a show, basically a file that if you want to back up and it contains all the playlists and all that data, you can do that. It's an we have an easy way to transfer data between multiple shows, multiple playlists, and so on. So
yes, that's possible. It's the UI builder that we saw during the webinar. You can use the UI builder to create custom templates.
Right. I would like to say something else that we did not show in this UI, in this presentation. Right, so we showed the UI builder where you can build your own UI. We also support, again, because this is web technology and we're basically just showing HTML, we also support external websites. So let's say you're you have web developers in your like in-house, and you want to do like really crazy stuff, really custom HTML, yeah, we can do that. You can open up a template in UI Builder, and instead of building the UI manually, you can set a URL. So every time this template will be selected, it will show the external URL, and you can do whatever you would like there. And of course, it will run on the same, it will run on a sandbox iframe, so it should not crash Erizos Studio in case you have errors there.
So this is important that MediaHub, it's not a MAM, as you know, in the broadcast world, to handle videos and transcoding for playout and that sort of stuff. The idea behind MediaHub is more of an object store. So in a lot of your graphics in the workflow, you will need to use headshots, for example, of the candidates in the elections, or you need flags or logos. So we call these media objects that are supplements to the graphics. And there's always a problem in the broadcast workflow is how do you manage these assets? How do you get them to the engine for playout, because it might be too slow to play them out over the network. And all those sort of small nuances or the issues that you face with external media objects inside real-time graphics, that's what MediaHub aims to solve. And because Erizos Studio supports multiple render engines, so that problem becomes even bigger, because you need to have the same video clips available to, for example, Vizrt and Pixotope. So MediaHub supports that for you out of the box. Yes, Amir will put up a slide at the end regarding that. Yes, we support ENPS. We fully support the MOS protocol, so we can support any newsroom system that uses that's based off the MOS protocol. And so yeah, so if there is a newsroom system that we don't support out of the box, as long as they support the MOS protocol, we can interact with them.
Oh yeah, so okay, so it could obviously can run on any one of those. It could be run on either on your premise, right, or in the cloud. It could be completely virtualized. The server itself, not the control app, because I'm guessing it to run this on a virtualized machine, a virtual machine, it will not handle correctly, because we're running Unreal and Pixotope natively, and that's an app that requires strong GPU. So, yeah, so the server side, of course. Now, if you do run it on, let's say, AWS, now the server obviously needs a way to communicate with the engines. So if you have, if your servers are publicly available, through an IP, cool, yes, that will work. But I'm guessing for most broadcasters, it won't work unless you're doing only a singular, for example, a singular graphics, and singular is web-based. So yes, Erizos Studio can be run in the cloud on an AWS machine, and it can manage that graphics, and it can be accessed from any machine around the world. Right, good question. So transition logic is fully supported. You can import, actually in most of our demos that we go into to a TV station, the first thing that we request is a Vizrt archive with your templates and graphics. We either connect to the graphic hub or import that archive into our own graphic hub, and basically just load that graphics and fire it up. So it's fully supported. All the graphic elements, all the transition logic you might have, it's fully supported. It's important to say that our Vizrt integration does not rely on media sequencer. The only required component from Vizrt is the graphic hub, the graphic hub REST service, and obviously Viz engines and local previews. That's it. We handle all the transition logic ourselves. So transition logic is fully supported, and it works out of the box with all the control fields. Combo pages, this is a feature that we will have. It's a feature that we will have it's planned to be in July. At the moment, the version of Erizos Studio is 2.5. We plan to have it at 2.6 or 2.7. And so it will be available at that time. So a little bit about combo pages. For you who do not know what a combo page, so a combo page is usually in Vizrt workflow, it's being used to a transition logic. A transition logic is a method to you have multiple layers in your graphic. Let's say a lower third, a clock, a logo, an image on the right. So each one of those elements could go in, out, and change. It's completely individual and self-contained. But sometimes you want to have a lower third and an image come up together and go down together. You don't want two different items in your playlist. You want one item with the title and that image. So this is a combo page in a Vizrt workflow. What we plan to release, and again in 2.6, is a bit more enhanced version of combo pages, where you can mix, create a combo pages of two transition logic layers, or for example, let's say you want to hook up together an AR element about election candidate, and also a lower third about that candidate name, and maybe that lower third is in singular, and the AR element is in Pixotope. So you want one item in your playlist, candidate name, Trump, image. Once you upload it once, you take it, and it will be immediately be divided and sent the AR element to Pixotope engine and the lower third to a singular. And so it would show up together and come up together with a single item in your rundown.
Yes, this can be done using it's a very advanced topic, so you need some programming skills. You need to know how to use an API, for example. But using the Erizos Studio API, you can talk from a template to the API and create pages and do everything that you need to do. It's not out the box, but you need some development skills, but it's definitely possible.
Maybe I'll explain a little bit about how an example workflow of that. Let's say you would have one template in here, and that's like the page creator template, right? You would open it, and you have like a page in here as the first item, right? And you would see a custom UI in here. And UI builder, you type in the data, click a button, and what it will do, instead of populating the templates fields with data, it will communicate with the Erizos Studio server. And let's say it will create that page inside that news folder, inside that US election folder, and it will create a page automatically. So it can be done. As Ronnie said, it requires some coding skills, but that's, I guess the person who asked that question has that coding skills or the manpower to do that. But that's completely doable.
In a server environment, each client, so if you have, say, for example, 2 studios and you have one instance of Erizos Studio running in each studio, each client needs a license, but feel free to contact us. The contact information is up on the screen, or you can go to erizos.tv and drop us a message via the contact form. We can discuss the licensing in more detail. So that brings us to the end of our QA session and the end of the webinar. I just want to take a minute to thank the Future Group and Pixotope for hosting us and giving us the platform to talk, and thank you everyone for joining and taking the time to learn more about Erizos Studio. And thank you, Amir, for walking us through it.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Pixotope. Thanks, Ronnie. I left this the contact page open in my webinar. Please write the emails. You can contact either me or Ronnie, or directly the sales representative from Pixotope. I guess for most of you, that would be Tom, that handles the Americas. But if you're from other region like Latin America, oh yeah, of course, there's Hans, and from any other region, you have all the contact details.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.